Okay. So let us try to understand that how it works, how a data center is being managed in data center. So basically, we have discussed that we have lots of servers and lots of switches which are connected. Okay, so if we consider a factory network topology, in factory network topology, we have discussed that this is the hierarchy and how the connections are being formed. Okay, so if we say it's a k array switch, so k array means in every switch there are k number of ports. So we have to form k number of ports, and from every core switch, every port will be connected. Okay, so from every core switch, every port will be connected. And similarly, in every pod, we have some aggregation switch. So in aggregation switch layer, we have k by 2 number of aggregation switch and k by 2 number of TOR switch. So in this way, the connectivity is being formed. The major advantage of this data center, if we use factory network topology, the major advantage is if at any moment a part of this network is being disconnected, like if any switch in core layer or aggregation layer is being disconnected, then that network will not be disconnected. So that means the part, none of this part will be disconnected. But if all the aggregation switches of a pod is being disconnected, then the host which are connected to that pod will be disconnected. Similarly, in case of TOR switch, if one TOR switch is being uh, disconnected or is not working properly, then the hosts which are connected to this TOR switch will be disconnected from this network. So we have some advantage, we have some disadvantage. We'll discuss these things today. Okay. So the major advantage of using these lots of redundant link is basically to overcome the problem of failure of core switch or aggregation switch. Okay, so we have alternative path. So at any moment, if a core switch or an aggregation switch is being uh, shut down, or it is being failed, then the network will not, there will be no problem in the network, because there are lots of alternative links by which the traffic will be redirected. So this is the basic architecture of the factory network topology. Now we have another type of network topology, and this network topology is basically VL2 network topology. Okay, again, the purpose of this VL2 network topology is connecting lots of hosts or managing a huge infrastructure. But you can I can show you that basically the major difference between these two network topology is, in VL2 network topology we need less number of switches to establish the connection. So if we want to create VL2 network topology instead of FAT3, then number of connection will be less than that. Okay, but still we have the alternative connections. So if we have key array switch, like as we have discussed in the previous case, so if we have k array switch, then for k array switch, there will be k by 2 number of core switch. Every core switch will be connected to aggregation switches. So all the aggregation switches will be connected by the core switch, every core switch. And finally, there will be the number of aggregation switch and number of TOR switch is same. So there will be k by 2 number of hosts in every TOR switch. Okay. So in this way, the network connectivity is being formed. So as in this diagram, I have shown that these are the links. So for one core switch, if we think that this is the core switch, let me highlight the part. So if this is the core switch, Now for this core switch, we have k number of links. So k number of links will be used to connect k number of aggregation switches. Okay. Now in aggregation switch, in core switch layer, how many core switches are there? There are k by 2 number of core switches. So if there are k by 2 number of core switches, then one aggregation switch will be connected to each and every core switch, as we have mentioned earlier, because a core switch will be connected with every aggregation switch. Okay, so k by 2 number of core switches exist in this k array VL2 network. So k by 2 number of links will be used to connect all the this num this number of links are being used to connect all the core switches with this aggregation switch. Okay, now remaining number of links, how many links are remaining for this aggregation switch? Total number of links are k, and total number of link is k, and k by 2 number of links are being used to connect to core switches. So rest of the links, that means rest of the links means k minus k by 2. So again k by 2 links are remaining. So this k by 2 links are being used to connect the lower layer. So these k by 2 links are being used to connect the k by 2 number of TOR switches. So that's why in this network topology, if we have k number of aggregation switch, then in the lower layer we have k number of TOR switch. Okay, so this is how this network is being formed. Similarly, for one TOR switch, as it is being highlighted here, so for this TOR switch, for this TOR switch, k by 2 number of links are being used to connect to aggregation switches, and remaining k by 2 number of links are being used to connect this host. Okay. So this is how this VL2 network topology is being formed. Now, just if we compare these two diagrams, I will reduce this font size so that you can understand. Now, sorry. If I compare these two network topologies like VL2 and FAT3 together, you can see that the number of connections in FAT3 network is too large compared to VL2 network. So number of connections in FAT3 network is too large. So what will be the advantage? So if we have this kind of requirement that the huge amount or huge volume of data needs to be transferred among the hosts. Okay, so if huge volume of data needs to be transferred among the hosts, then we will prefer FAT3 network topology instead of VL2 network topology, because in VL2 network topology we have less number of connectivity. Okay, so if we have less number of connectivity in VL2 network, obviously we will prefer this type of network design if in that network the data transfer requirement is comparatively less. Okay, with the advancement of these technologies nowadays, in most of the cases, we prefer FAT3 network topology. The reason is very simple. In today's world, you can say that data transfer requirement is very high, because it's not only about the computation, but we need lots of storage. So huge volume of storage is required for managing this data, which will be stored in this data center as well as which will be processed. So if we want to store uh, log of Flipkart or Amazon or any banking site, so huge volume of data is being generated. In case of social media, you know that how much data is being generated in every minute. So if we want to store this data in our data center, obviously data transfer requirement is very high. So volume of data which will be transferred among the client as well as among the server is very high. Just for example, we are very familiar with this type of scenarios that we are logged into Facebook and we are going live. We are logged into Gmail account and we are going live in YouTube. From the user's perspective, you are generating 100 MB or 200 MB of data, but this data needs to be transferred, which is being stored in the server. So it needs to be transferred from your client device to server device. So if millions of billions of users are using this type of services, then you can assume that how much data is being generated and which is to be stored in this cloud data center. Okay, so to solve this kind of problem, obviously we will prefer factory network topology, because here our links are too large, the communication links are too large, and uh, it will be helpful to meet the user's demand. Okay, now if we think this factory network topology, generally in most of the cases we will prefer this type of network topology for computational purpose. So where data transfer requirement is not significantly high, as we have discussed in the previous examples. So instead of that, if we need that, we have the requirement, we need communication among the client and server, but still if the data center requirement, the data transfer requirement is comparatively less, then we will prefer VL2 network topology. Okay, so that's why the cloud service provider will decide that which kind of network topology they should use for their data center. So it will be decided based on the user's requirement. So all the clients they have, based on their requirement, they will decide that it should be the net best suited network topology for their data center. Okay, now just for example, just to analyze it, that we have these two types of network topology. So what will be the number of switches and how many servers can be connected here? So in factory network topology, if we use k array switch, or the network is known as k array network. So what will be the number of hosts that can be connected in a k array switch? Just we can compare this. So let me show you. Okay, I have not shared the whole screen. Just wait for a minute. Okay. So let me show you that how this connectivity is going to be. So so in core layer, in case of factory network topology, how many switches are there in core layer? K number of switches. So in core layer, we have k number of switches. Okay. Every switch is connected. Every switch is connected with the port. How many ports are there? K number of ports. So we have in next layer we have k number of ports, and in every port, how many switches are there? In this diagram, you can see that there are k number of ports. Now in every port, k by 2 number of aggregation switch and k by 2 number of TOR switch. So how many switches are there in a port as a whole? It will be k number of switch. So k number of ports, and each and every port contains k number of switch. So how many switches are there in this aggregation switch and TOR switch layer? It will be k into k number of switch. Okay. So as a whole, how many switches are required? So total number of switches required is basically the number of switches required in core layer as well as plus aggregation and TOR. The total number of switch required is K plus K into K. This is the total number of switch requirement. So now in our example, if we say that K is 16, the value of K is 16. So that means we are going to use 16 port switches. We are going to use 16 port switches. So it indicates that K equals to 16 indicates that we are going to use 16 port switches, which are very common in our laboratory. Even in most of the cases, the number of port in a switch is much larger than this. Generally 20, 24 or 32 port switches are commonly used in our laboratory. Okay, so if K equals to 16, just you can put this value here. So you can just put this value K equals to 16 and you will get a value. So you can calculate this value. So that will be the total number of switch requirement to design a factory network topology. Okay. Now, how many hosts are required? Let's go to this lower layer. So in one pod, how many TOR switches are there? K by 2 number of TOR switch in one pod. So we have K by 2. This is the number of K by 2 number of TOR switch in one pod. So in one pod, K by 2, or just to show it, in one pod, we have K by 2 number of TOR switch. Now, there are K number of pods. So in K number of pods, how many switches will be there? So it will be K into K by 2. That will be the total number of TOR switch in one pod. This is the number of TOR switch, and in using all the pods, we have K into K by 2 number of TOR switch. Okay, this is the number of TOR switch. Okay, now with every TOR switch, how many hosts are connected? With every TOR switch, there are K by 2 number of lanes. If there are K by 2 number of lanes, so with every TOR, we have K by 2 number of hosts. So number of hosts, or we can say that the maximum number of hosts that can be connected, that can be connected in a K array factory. Okay, so in a K array factory is basically, so we have this number of TOR switch. So K into K by 2 is the number of TOR switch multiplied by number of hosts that can be connected with each TOR. So it will be K by 2 again. So this is the total number of hosts that can be connected in a K array factory network. Okay, so you can put the value of K here and you will get the value of maximum number of hosts that can be connected in a factory network topology. Okay, so do you have any doubt? Hello, hello, can you hear me?
No doubt, sir.
Now let us go to the next network topology, which is basically This one is VLT network topology. So we can calculate in the similar way that we are going to use k array uh, k number of ports in every switch. So how many port switches are there? So number of port switch. Let me show you here. So I will use a different color that will be helpful to understand that this is for other network topology. Okay. So in case of PL2 network topology, in K in our core switch layer, we have K by 2 number of core switch. This is the number of core switch. Okay. Now let's check. So in every switch, in every core switch is connected with aggregation switches. Okay. So every core switch is connected with aggregation switches. So how many links are there? This is being used to connect as we have k number of links. Um, so in aggregation switch layer, how many aggregation switches are there? How many aggregation switches are there in this layer?
Four.
Hmm. Hello.
Yes, sir. This layer has four switches.
Okay. So in the form of k, what will be the value? Just for example, I'm saying that k equals to say k equals to 8. If k equals to 8, what is the value? In this example, the value of k equals to 4. Now, if I talk about k equals to 8, so if k equals to 8 in the topmost layer, how many core switches are there? There will be 4 core switches. Okay, there will be 4 core switches. So, how many links are there in the downward? How many links are there? If k equals to 8,
Four. For 8 by 2 links, right? So,
if k equals to 8, from the core switch layer, every switch has k number of links. Every switch has k number of links. Okay. So if every switch has k number of links, then it will be k by 2 number of switch multiplied by k number of links. There is the downward link, number of downward link. If we say this is the core switch layer, the number of downward link is k by 2 multiplied by k, because every switch has k number of ports and number of port switches k by 2. Any doubt here?
no, sir.
Okay. Now in the
Understood.
aggregation switch layer, let me consider that this is the aggregation switch layer. So if this is aggregation switch, so how many switches are there? In every switch, how many upward connections are there? For every aggregation switch, from this diagram, you can understand in aggregation switch, for every aggregation switch, we have k by 2 number of links in the upward direction and rest of the links in the downward direction. So here, number of aggregation, for this one, upward link is k by 2. For one switch, it will be k by 2. Okay. If for one aggregation switch, upward link is k by 2, then what will be the number of upward links? Number of upward link. So this number of upward link in aggregation switch layer and number of downward link in core switch layer should be exactly same. So if we have k by 2 number of links for one aggregation switch, the number of aggregation switch in this layer should be k. So this value should be k, otherwise these two values will not be equal. So this one will not be equal with this one. So number of switch. So number of switch in aggregation switch layer in AS layer will be k. So total number of switch in aggregation switch layer will be k. Okay. So if we use k array switches for creating or designing a VL2 network topology, then this is for VL2 network topology, and this is for factory. This is for VL2 network topology, and this is for factory. So number of switch in aggregation switch layer is k. This is the value. Okay. Now this every aggregation switch here aggregation switch. So how many links are there in the downward direction? The number of link will be same. So in every aggregation switch, downward link is k by 2, and number of link, number of aggregation switch is k. So in the downward direction, number of link is k by 2. Okay. So from this layer, number of link in the downward direction is again k number of switch in aggregation layer into k by 2. The number of upward link in aggregation switch layer and number of downward link in aggregation switch layer will be same. So this is the value of total number of links in the downward direction in aggregation switch layer. Okay. So if this is the number of link in aggregation switch layer, every link will be connected with TOR switch. Now every TOR switch has k by 2 number of links, sorry, 2 links in the upward direction. So we have 2 links. So one TOR switch will be connected with this. So what will be the total number of TOR switch in this data center? Will be the total number of TOR switch. So from aggregation switch, total number of downward link is this value. This is the total number of downward link in this network. And every TOR switch is connected with 2 aggregation switches. So if one TOR switch is connected with 2 aggregation switches, then what will be the total number of TOR switch? So number of links in the aggregation switch layer, that is this value divided by 2. So from here we can determine that number of TOR switch here is k. Number of TOR switch here is k into k by 2. This is the total number of links. Then it will be multiplied by half. Okay. So basically k square by 4 number of TOR switches exist. So in this layer, total number of TOR switch is k square by 4. That will be the total number of TOR switch. Okay. Now, in every, how many links are there in every TOR switch? In every TOR switch, remaining link is 2 links are being used in upward direction. So remaining number of link is k by 2. Sorry, k minus 2. As we are using k number of 4, So number of remaining link in the downward direction is k minus 2, and every host is connected by one cable. So k minus 2 multiplied by total number of TOR switch, that means k square by 4. So this is the value of number of host, number of hosts in a data center. Okay, so if we use, just for example, if we use k equals to 8, the number of hosts that can be connected to a PL2 network is, you can put this value, so it will be 8 minus 2 k minus 2 multiplied by 8 square by 4. That will be the value. So total number of hosts that can be connected to a PL2 network is this. Whereas in case of factory network topology, what will be the total number of hosts? That will be k cube by 4. Okay, so here I will just change this color. Just wait for 1 minute. So here for this network, we have k cube by 4 number of hosts that can be connected. Whereas in this network, it will be k cube by 4 minus k square by 4. Sorry, k square by 2. So if we just calculate this value will be k cube by 4 minus k square by 2. Okay, so this is basically the network structure which we are using for designing a factory network topology or PL2 network topology. Okay, so do you have any query or doubt in this section? Why we are using, if I ask that why we are going to use this type of network topology where lots of redundant links are there? Because in our institutional network, what is the structure of our institutional network? Just I will show you with one comparison, because the network structure is a simple tree network structure. Just okay, I will add one more slide. As you are familiar with this network structure, in our college network, the structure is completely different. We are using a simple tree network structure, tree structure. So what is the structure of this network? Just to compare with, let me show you with this example that we have one internet connection. This is the internet. We have one internet connection. Now this connection will be taken and it will be sent to a router. So institutional router, institute, the institute router. So this connection will use this. Sorry, will use this connection in an institutional router. Now from this router, we are dividing in this connection into multiple departments. So say this is CSE router. Similarly, there is IT router. Then similarly, civil engineering router. So in this way, we are dividing this connection from our institutional central router to departmental router. Okay. So if we have n number of departments or n number of endpoints, then it will be connected into n number of departments. Now every department in computer science department, we will divide the connection into multiple labs. So just like this one. So we have, say it's a lab one, we have lab two, we have lab n, say we have one classroom one, classroom, we have another classroom two. So in this way, this we are connecting this departmental router with multiple labs, faculty rooms, classrooms, and like this. Okay. So from this router, we are dividing this connection. Now again in lab one, we have the machine. So if we have this machines here, so this is basically the host machine. So we can say it's a computer, but in the context of a data center, it will be treated as server. Okay. So if we have computer one, computer two like this in this lab, so n number of computers are connected. So if n number of machines are there in lab one, then they will be connected with this switch. Okay. So this is the way how connection is being formed in an institute. Okay. So this is the structure of this network. So you can see that this is the tree structure. We don't have any redundant link. So if this router of this CSC department fails, then all the labs as well as the classrooms, faculty rooms, so whatever connected with this CHC router, everything will be disconnected as it's a tree structure. So if you delete, you have learned it in data structure that if you have a tree and if you delete any intermediate node without establishing new connection, then all the nodes were just children of this node, they will be disconnected. So from our tree structure, if we delete a node from an intermediate position, then all the nodes of this subtree will be deleted. So they will lose their internet connectivity. So to avoid it, in real-to network or in factory network, we are using a different topology where we are maintaining lots of redundant links. And these links are being mostly used for failover recovery. So if any intermediate node fails, instead of TOR, because in a server, if we have a rack server, we can't install multiple TOR switch. Okay. So generally, by convention, one TOR switch is being used. But if we have such kind of requirement, we can install it. There is no technical boundary that multiple TOR switches cannot be installed. But generally, in a TOR switch, a whole switch will not fail at a time. Some ports of that switch may fail. So that can be resolved. And there are some other techniques for this management. Okay. So this is the basic difference between pre-structured network, which is being used in an institute, in an academic institute, or in company like this. But in data center, this type of network structure is not accepted at all. Okay. So this is the basic difference. Now, just for curiosity, um, may I know one thing that in your this is not just for basic conception. I'm not discussing the next topic for your syllabus. Just for example, uh, many of you are involved in technical fest or in any other activities in our institute. So if you think that you have designed one application for students registration, so who will participate in this event, so they can register through a portal. So you will host one website. So you will develop one web application. Okay. Now, after developing this web application, where will you deploy it? Where you are going to run this application? I'm expecting answer from you. So where will you deploy this application so that students can log into your system and they can register by mentioning their events, in which events they want to participate. Hello. Where will you install it? I hope many of you have that kind of experience. And most of you are already familiar with web application development, whether it's a PHP or Servlet JSP or any other Django like this. You are familiar with it. You are in final years. Where will you deploy it? If you think that you will deploy it in some other server, then you can discuss here. What will be your choice? Is there anyone who is in this meeting?
Yes, sir, I'm present. I'm not. I have no idea about that hosting in the website.
Have you written any code in PHP?
Yes, I've written just for training purpose, but haven't executed any of them in for website purposes.
No, if
Um,
you have already developed one PHP application, then when you have
we
learned it,
just
you must know.
yes, sir. I just used the Apache XAMPP server, and behind that I just did all the coding. And but we haven't hosted anything for website purpose. No, just for making Android apps. That's it.
Okay, is there any student who was a member or in technical fest, or have you ever used or developed any application for your tech fest or other kind of cultural activities for this college? Who has given support in technical part, or all of you are manager? In this fest, there is no technical person. Have you ever designed an application for this type of activities or events? What? No one.
Sir, they're not present here. There are few who have been in the technical team, but they are not present in this meeting.
Okay, fine. Okay, just for example, if we think that in our college, we are developing one application for student registration in the events. So we have designed one application, say it's a PHP application or it's a JSP servlet application. Now, if it's a PHP application, you have installed Jam server or WAMP server or any kind of Apache server which is giving support to PHP application. So it provides this PHP and MySQL support. So if we have developed this type of application, say that this is a PHP server, PHP and MySQL. Okay. So we have installed it. So we will install Jam or WAMP server here. So the application will run here in computer one. Okay. In our institute, we have a specific network structure. So uh, what kind of IP address is being used in this college? 192 or 172 or 10 dot? You just tell me that which kind of or which range of IP addresses is being used.
Sir, 192.
192. Okay, say in computer 1 or computer 10, its IP address is 192.168.2.10. Okay, this is the IP address of this machine. So in this machine, you have installed this JAM server or WAMP server, or if you are familiar with GSP servlet, then you have installed this Tomcat server for Tomcat, JBoss, Glassfish, or WebLogic, this kind of server here. Now, your application is running in this machine. Now, if I'm a student and I'm participating or I want to register to one event, so I want to access it from this. This is mechanical engineering. So from mechanical engineering department, this is lab X. From this lab X, I'm trying to access this machine from computer Y. I want to access it. So in my machine, obviously there is an IP address. So say its IP address is 192.168.0.5. So from this machine, I want to register to your site. So what I will do, I will just open in this machine. I will open the browser. I will open the browser. Now, using that browser, if your application is running and it is already running in this computer 192.168.2.10, then in URL part, I will type this address 192.168.2.10 and I will press enter if it is hosted on 80 port or on default port. So I press enter. So your application is accessible from this machine. So your application is running in this machine, in this computer. Okay. Now I'm trying to register to your portal. So I will access it from a different machine. And obviously, at this moment, I'm saying that I'm assuming that I'm in another computer of mechanical engineering lab. So from that lab, I'm trying to access it. So you can understand that from this machine, if I open this browser and if I type the URL along with the service name, so I will be able to get access to this machine. Now my question is, sorry. Now my question is, if your friend is sitting in his room and say this is, um, for example, it's a sector 5 or sector, uh, say it's a sector 1. His address is sector 1. Now, so this student, so if this is student 1 who is trying to access this website which you have launched here from his home, is it possible to access this machine from his home or outside of this institute? What do you feel? Is it possible to access this machine from outside of this institute? You have learned networking. Don't say that I have forgot everything at this moment.
It is accessible.
Do you agree that this one is accessible?
Sir, can you repeat? I just had network issue.
may I expect that anyone else will reply? You are in final year, you have learned networking and many more papers. This is the just final year. You have only 2 semesters remaining. Are you active in this meeting? Let me call by your name. Ria. If I call anyone, unmute yourself and respond. Ria, Obhinav, Afrita,
Yes, sir.
Adarsh,
Yes, sir.
Adnan,
Yes, sir.
Akshay, Anjali,
Yes, sir.
Orindam,
Yes, sir.
Orithru, Dharmesh,
Yes, sir.
Himanshu, Faisal,
Yes, sir.
uh, this one, Karangma. What's your
Yes, sir.
pronunciation?
Parungama, sir.
Karangama. Okay. File, Ria, Rohit, Rohit,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Rohit Kumar,
Yes, sir.
Shagnik,
Yes, sir.
Shambhavi,
Yes, sir.
Saurabh, Saurabh Kumar, Panwal, Shashwat Kumar,
Yes, sir.
Shayoni, Shaunak,
Yes, sir.
Rijit,
Yes, sir.
Shubham,
Yes, sir.
Salman,
Present, sir.
Shaumil,
Yes, sir.
Shaunak, Shaufik is there, Trishti,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Shubhadeep, Sunanda,
Yes, sir.
Shunayana,
Yes, sir.
Sushant,
Yes, sir.
Shushabhan,
Yes, sir.
Salman, Vishal.
Yes, sir.
So what do I expect? If you are present but still you are silent, why? These things, you should know these things very well. Have already learned computer. networking. Try to visualize everything. Nothing is abstract. Whatever you can say in this college or outside, we have this network. We have different kinds of network, but the network, this is the basic network structure which is available here. So you should know every bit of this network. Otherwise, why you are learning computer science? Until you visualize anything, then you will just get a marks in a semester and you will forget everything when the semester ends. Please try to understand that how this network is being formed. This is not the topic which we should discuss in this class. But if you do not answer properly, then what do I expect? That may I assume that you are familiar with this thing? Then I can just skip and I can go to our topic again. And if you feel that no, this is not known to you, you have not thought in that way, then we can discuss over here. Because any distributed computing environment is completely based on its network structure. When we are developing any application, then first we have to think that on what kind of network it will be deployed. If there is any kind of failure, how it will be recovered. These things are most important things. Just for this one, I'm assuming that you are not familiar with this. I don't know because I'm not getting any answer. If you are familiar, then we can skip. What should I do? Will I discuss or I can skip? No one is responding. Abhita,
Yes, sir.
hello.
Yes, sir.
What is your answer? Can I access it if I have deployed one application in this server? Can I access it from outside of this institutional network?
Sir, I don't know.
Why? What do you think? But you have learned it. What do you think? Let us resolve the problem. Don't be silent. If we are running one application in one server like this one, so we are considering that in this server this application is running. First of all, this machine is accessible within this network if they belongs to same subnetwork. If 192.168.2.10 this machine and another machine 192.168.0.5, if these two machine belongs to same subnet, if they belongs to same subnetwork, then they are accessible from each other. So if they belongs to same subnetwork, then this machine and this machine can talk to each other. You have written the program in network lab for eco.
Sir,
Yes.
it is accessible from outside. We have to do port coding,
Okay.
and there are 3 steps actually. First we have to configure the server computer's firewall, then create a port forwarding rule, client server or server client, and then we use its IP address, or we can also use a DNS name as the server address.
So basically, we need one. Simply, we can say that there will be a NAT device in this college, network address translator. So in this NAT, we have to configure this port forwarding rule.
Yes.
If these two machines belongs to same subnetwork, they can communicate with each other. But if they belongs to different subnetwork, then they can't talk to each other. So we must have one network address translator or some other device or software module installed in a machine by which it can communicate. We have different techniques, but in simplest form, I'm saying that we are using network address translator. Okay. So even if this network address translator is there, basically we must have one address for this global IP address for this college. Like in our case, if we say that 130.50.75.12 is the IP address. This is the global IP. This is the global IP address of this institute. So if this is the global IP address, we have to configure it at our front end. So in which device this connection is being, the port is being connected, on that device we have to set this global IP address. If this is the global IP address which is purchased by our institute. So if you want to access it from outside, say our college name is tint dot edu dot in. Now for CSC department, this is csc dot tint dot edu dot in. Okay. There will be a domain name mapping. So if our college website is running in computer in, here college website is running. Here we have deployed one application for technical quest. So in this machine, the website for mechanical engineering department is running. So in different machines, there's different modules are running, but still they are not accessible from outside of this network until you configure the IP packet forwarding rule. So you have to set this forwarding rule in network address translator, or if you are using some other technique, then in that device you have to configure it. So the external users, that means the users who are sitting outside of this college network. So if this is client 1 or client 2, in that way we have lots of clients who are trying to access this website. So a connection will be established between their machine and this IP address. So they will type, if the user is typing csc.tint.edu.in, just followed by http followed by this, or https followed by this. So if the user types this on his or her URL, then a request will be sent. So where it will go? So first, this request will be sent to DNS server. You may have local DNS or you may have global DNS. So this request, so from this machine, when a student is trying to access it, then he or she will hit this URL. Now, this name will be resolved by a DNS server. So it will be resolved by domain name server. Now, domain name server will return the IP address. So when domain name server will return the IP address to this client machine, now from your application, or that means the browser will know that the IP address of this URL is something like this. So it will get this information that 130.50.75.12 is the IP address corresponding to this domain name. So user is requesting for a specific domain name. Now, when it will go to internet, so in your machine, basically we configure the DNS server information. In every machine, this information is, your network interface is configured with this. Generally, we use 4.4.4.4 or 4.2.2.2 as the default domain name server. So there is a renowned global DNS server, so that will receive the request. Now in its table, it will check that this is the name for which IP address. Now, so it will perform a lookup operation. Lookup means search. So it will perform a lookup operation. After performing lookup operation, now it will return the IP address with respect to this name or domain name. So after receiving this IP address, now it can prepare a packet by mentioning its own IP address and destination IP address. So until it can prepare a packet that cannot be routed, so in a packet, we must have source IP address, destination IP address. So when it will receive that information, then it is able, so the client machine or client or browser is able to create a packet. Now that packet will be sent to that machine. So if in a packet we mention the source IP address and destination IP address, so from this machine it can be redirected. Okay. Now just I will change this color to understand it. So now after forming this packet, now it can be routed over the network. So, and its connection will be established between this global router or what this global IP is assigned in our institute and your client machine. So when this connection is being established, so in the background we have lots of routing protocols you have learned. So in this way, the connection is being established. Now when this connection is being established, after establishing this connection, what happens next? IP address, this global IP address is assigned to a router or some other device. But actually the application, the PHP application or JSP servlet application, these applications are not hosted in a router. It's not a full-fledged machine. It can perform only routing operation. It can forward the data. It can decide the route, in which route the packet needs to be forwarded. But a router cannot hold an web application. So the application is not installed in this device. If the application is not in this device, then how this application will run? So we have, because in an internet, two machines can communicate if they have the global identity. So global identity is basically the global IP address. So 10.10 dot something or 192.168 dot something or 172.16 dot something. These are the IP addresses which are reserved for our local network. It cannot be used for global network. So to create a subnet, we can use this type of IP addresses. So based on our network size, we can decide that whether we will prefer 192 dot something range, 172 dot something range, or 10 dot something this range. Okay. So how they will communicate? So they will communicate in this way that now we have two machines having global IP address. Now these two machines can communicate. So after receiving this data, the application is running in our lab. So this application is running in lab 1 of computer science department from this diagram. This application is running in mechanical engineering department in computer Y. Okay. So actually the application is running in a host machine or desktop or a server. So when this request will be received by this NAT, Now, based on the forwarding rule, instead of performing anything on this received packet, it will just encapsulate with local address because that information is available in the net. Now it will be redirected to the corresponding server. So if the user or the student one from sector 1 of Salt Lake is requesting for a resource which is running in 192.168.2.10 machine, then after receiving the request by this NAT, it will forward the request to the corresponding machine. Okay. So how if multiple services are running in our lab, like in one server as we have shown here, in one server in computer science department, our computer science website is running, that is https://csc.tint.edu.in. In mechanical engineering department, another application is running, that is me.tint.edu.in. So instead of hosting it in global or in third-party server like GoDaddy or some other service provider, we can launch it in our infrastructure. So if we launch it within our infrastructure, then they will communicate in this way. So when this NAT will receive that the request is for CSC department, it will redirect the packet for this machine 192.168.2.10 machine. If the request is being received for ME department, then it will be redirected to ME server where the mechanical engineering website is launched. Okay. So in this way, this address translation will be performed by this network address translator. Okay. Now actually, if you request for a resource for computer science department, the request will be received by the computer science server. Now after that, it will generate the response and the response will be forwarded to NAT. Now NAT maintains this information that this packet is from which source. So this request has been submitted by this source. That kind of information is being managed by this NAT. So NAT will decapsulate the packet. It will encapsulate with the global IP address and it will forward it to your machine. So that means the machine in this diagram is student 1 is trying to access it from sector 1 of Salt Lake. So this is the way how two machines are communicating. So if we use local IP addresses within our machine as we are configuring it in our lab, so these machines are not accessible from outside until you configure it using NAT. That's why the programs, whatever you are writing in our lab, you can't access this program from your home. But if we configure NAT for every machine, then your machine is accessible from outside. Is it clear or we need some discussion about it? Just to understand the basic concept, is it clear to you? Just after taking your lunch, are you sleeping? No one is responding. Hello,
Yes, sir.
is there any doubt? I will
No, sir.
expect lots of doubt because there are lots
No,
of
we did
things.
this type of codings in networking. So
Hmm?
these port codings, client server codings we did in the previous semester. So
Hmm. Why you are not answering this?
sorry, sir. When you first questioned this, my network was in disorder. So when I rejoined, I didn't know what the question you asked. Later, I answered. That's why. Sorry.
Okay, so is it clear that in data center network, when we are using factory or VL2 network topology, why this type of tree-structured network topology cannot be used there. We are using this type of network topology in our institute. Even in most of the companies, this type of network topology will be followed. But still, this type of network topology is not accepted in data center. If this is the question given to you, what will be your answer? I do understand that no answer. Fine. So, from the previous class, do you have any doubt in virtualization or in different types of virtualization or in the earlier classes, the basic concept?
I don't have any doubt, sir. I understood all this.
Okay. I will invite you in Amazon Classroom. Okay. So all of you have to register in AWS Classroom, and some assignments will be given. So first, obviously, I will show you something. So if you are not familiar, because many of you are not familiar, so I can give you some assignment, and before giving the assignment, I will discuss the topic. So, but invitation will be sent very soon, within next week. I will invite you by creating a classroom. But beyond that, I have something to say. Like in case of all of you have Google Cloud Platform account or Google account, at least a Gmail account. You don't need to register by your credit card or debit card. You can just activate your Google Cloud Platform account. Okay. So here we will develop something like how an app engine will be created. So app engine application will be created and deployed in live server. So as we don't have any domain name, we have not purchased any domain name. That's why we will launch it on AppSpot server and subdomain, AppSpot subdomain. So I will show you how to access this Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Cloud Platform. And as you are not coming in this college at this moment, so it's not possible to show you how a cloud environment can be set up. But later on, if the situation is normal, then even after this semester, we can sit over there and we can configure a cloud platform within our infrastructure. So we can go for Eucalyptus tool or some other tool to configure it, so that you can get a clear idea that how a cloud environment is working in the background, because you have access to the services which is being provided by the CSPs. But until you configure it by your own, you will not be able to understand that how in the background how the services are being generated. Okay, so let us discuss few topics, because from the next class we'll start from here. So according to syllabus, you have seen this syllabus. So there are few topics like infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So you have to be familiar with this infrastructure as a service and software as a service at least. Okay, and obviously we will be familiar with platform as a service. Somehow this one is also mentioned. Platform as a service will be also discussed. So I have activated this Google Cloud Platform with my Gmail account. So this is console.cloud.google.com. Okay. Now in this, after logging to this console.cloud.google.com, this is the panel by which you can deploy your cloud services. Okay. Those who have not
in this window or who are not familiar with this services of Google, you are familiar with this software as a service. Like if I just log into my account, even this Gmail is running in cloud platform. You know that. So Gmail is running in cloud platform. If I go there, this is Google Docs, Drives, or Sheets. Everything is basically nothing but the cloud service. So everything is cloud service. Okay. So this type of services are, what kind of services is this? Infrastructure, platform, or software?
Platform.
Platform. Any other opinion? Anyone who will disagree with this? We have discussed a lot. This is not platform. This is software as a service. This is there.
Sir, it is run on Google, no? That's why I
Hmm.
said platform.
Run on Google. That's why it's a platform.
It's run on Google and cloud platform, so that's why I said that. But yes, it's also software. Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
Basically, try to understand. If we have platform as a service, we are getting a development platform. You can develop your application, so you can write code, you can deploy it in this server. So if you are developing this application by yourself or by your team, and you are going to deploy it in a live server, then some platform is needed to deploy your application so that it goes live. So for that purpose, if you design an application and deploy in a cloud server, then a platform is being provided to you so that you can deploy it there. So this kind of services are known as platform as a service. But in case of software as a service, we are not developing any application. Okay, we are not developing any application. So how these applications are running? So this is a software which is developed by Google. You can get access to that service. So if I click on it, I'm getting access to this service, which is already developed by Google. So without installing Excel in my machine or in this host machine, I can access or I can get access to a sheet kind of service, which is being provided by Google platform or Google Cloud platform. So they are providing a software as a service. It's not platform as a service. Platform as a service is when you are asking for a platform where your application or code will run. And software as a service is the service provider has developed their software module. They are publishing this software module where you can get access. So you can use this software module for your own purpose. If you think in that way, then it's a software as a service.
Okay, sir. So can I say then GitHub is a platform service?
Just 1 minute, please. Hello, ma'am. So hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is so is it clear that what is platform as a service? Okay, you are talking about that the GitHub.
GitHub. Yes.
Okay. GitHub is platform as a service or it's a software as a service? Is it your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So think in this way: GitHub server. Uh, when you are developing some code, do you run this code on GitHub server? Whether GitHub is providing you a platform where you can run Java code or .NET or PHP MySQL.
I'm not sure if it's able to run, but execute the compile the code, but it's able to store, and that's I know. But some say that it can run code. GitHub can GitHub does have compilers. So there are somebody who are saying that, so I'm not sure. That's why I'm
No,
asking.
no, in a software, they may have different types of services, but when we are managing this document, GitHub is basically a subversion repository. So we are talking about when we are talking about subversion, then this is a subversion server. If it's a subversion server, then it's a software as a service. They have developed their subversion, they have published it over net, so you can access it and you can store your document. They will manage this version controlling. So both of these subversion like GitHub, or if you are going to use Apache subversion or SVN, both are basically software as a service. But if GitHub provides you a platform where you can run your code, you can deploy it and publish it, then obviously that will be platform as a service. But not this one where we are maintaining it for version control. Am I clear to you?
Yes, sir. But the difference, yes.
If you run this same code you have developed, if you run it on GoDaddy, or if you are going to deploy this application in other service providers like Mocha Host, Hosting Gear, so there are lots of service providers. So if you deploy this application there, if you acquire when you are performing as SLA, so when you are going to choose your service level agreement with the service provider, so during this SLA or agreement, if you choose that you are going to use cloud service, then your application will be deployed there. You can deploy it and it will be executed as a on a platform as a service because your code is being executed there. They are providing a platform where your application or code can be deployed, but otherwise it's not a platform as a service. In subversion, in any kind of subversion, we are accessing a software service where we can manage our version controlling. So the revisions can be managed there. So that's why this is a software as a service. Any other query? Hello.
No, sir.
So fine. I'm going to stop or end this session. So we'll meet on the next class. Okay.